cues. And so we had to exit quickly. And again, our doctor kept discounting. And why? And this is important because it's common. Your kids learn to read and write. They can do math. They have friends. They're cheery and outgoing. They talk. So nothing's wrong. This is just a bit of stress. They'll outgrow it. Unfortunately, very common. And again, as Andrew was being diagnosed, Ainsley was able to get diagnosed at the same time. So she was 2 years younger. And in her case, also Tourette syndrome, ADHD, and learning disabilities, along with severe mood and anxiety disorders. But the wonderful news is that we then embarked on this lifelong journey, an endless roller coaster, but with lots of hope for the first time, resilience, grit, determination, and success.
There's so much in here already, because one thing I want to mention, so this was about 20 years ago then, right?
Oh, more than that. My kids are in their mid-30s now.
And the amount of information we have today is much larger, which is exciting. But the lack of information then must have made it so much more hard. And essentially, you are the pioneer to helping parents when they're seeing this behavior challenges or anything like that. Plus, there's something to really mention about that motherhood, that parenthood intuition, right? Because even if the doctors, the neighbors, the family are saying everything is fine, inside, you know your kid, and we do need to listen to that, and you did. And I love how when finally we are able to categorize the behavior, right? The doctor says, this is what we're assessing it at. It does give you those, hey, now we can work with something. Once it has a name, we can try to develop it and see what's going on. I also wanted to mention, it must have been so hard as a mom to see that behavior going on in different ways. You know, sometimes you're feeling for your child, of course, and then sometimes you're like, man, we're in this situation. I was hoping one thing would go right. It's not really going right. You know, the stress can become overwhelming over time. And then and feeling it for the kids, you know, because when we act out, when we do anything, there's an internal battle, right? So things just aren't working well. So they're misbehaving, but it's also, you know, internally, there's just, you just want to hug them with a blanket almost internally, but you got to get through this and figure it out and answer all the questions. So just the stress amount, I mean, that must have been just really kind of built you up to even have more strength. Like you said, it changed over to this new chapter of resilience and grit, and we can do this. How are we going to do this together?
Yes, you can either, as I've said many times, be defeated by this, or you can embrace life and say, we're going to go forward. And when the children were in so much pain, when Andrew said to me, I want to die, when Ainsley left me a note on my bed that said, I know I'm a bad child, but I can't help my behavior. Oh. You freeze at first, you're shocked, and you die inside. But it propelled David and me forward. We sat down with them. We explained, you're not bad children. What's happening is not your fault. Yeah. We importantly separated them, Lily, from their challenges so that their identities weren't 100% tied to their issues. And above all, I promised them that I would not rest until I found them the right help. And I always keep my promises. And that continues today. Now, as a parent, the stress is unbelievable at times. There's heartbreak, there's hopelessness, there's helplessness, there's frightening. You're frightened, you're terrified. You don't think about the next day or the next hour. You're just trying to get through minute by minute in the worst times. But of course, you're not in crisis all the time. So what you learn is to reset the expectations for your lives. Now, let me back up for a minute, if you would allow me. I wrote Hold On Tight, as you said, to help other parents. And I've mentioned already that both my husband and I come from families of privilege. But It's important to understand the journey, but even more important, I write and gift readers with 13 key insights in the book to help ease the journey. And these insights are universal. It doesn't matter if you're struggling financially or not, if you're single or married. They're universal. They cross all race, religions, cultures, ethnicities, gender identities. The list goes on. What it takes is that perseverance and that will to succeed. And everyone that's listening can do that. So, of these 13 key insights, the most overarching insight is to insist on an integrated partnership approach with every professional involved in your child's care. And this extends into adulthood. You don't know when you're a parent of younger children what your child's capabilities and needs are going to be as they grow up. And it
Sure.
changes, right?
Yeah.
But to this day, from the very beginning, I make sure that Andrews and Ainsley's healthcare providers, psychiatrists, and psychologists communicate with one another so that they can move forward. Schools, partnership. If they don't involve us as partners, Ainsley School held monthly group meetings with her principal, all her teachers, her external psychologist, and us. And Andrews School sent notes home every night, and we returned them the following morning. It's those partnerships that make it work. And even later, when your children become adults, employment.
Mm.
Most neurodivergent individuals will advocate for themselves. In Andrew's case, he can't. So I'm his advocate and his ally. But it's that partnership that makes such a key difference. So that's the overarching insight. And that will help you as a mother and as a parent gain more control of what's happening in your life. But you must reset the expectations for your lives. This is another key insight in the book.
Mm.
Many family and friends want to do the right thing, but are scared, don't know how. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of stigma and discrimination. It's unwitting. It comes from a lack of awareness, lack of education, misunderstandings. I had a parent call me last week that said her mother said, "Oh, it's such a shame that her 5-year-old who is ticking with Tourette syndrome won't ever grow up to have a normal life." Well, that's just not true.
Yeah.
It can have a full, absolute life. With family members, you have to learn which family members you can really embrace. I mean, you embrace them all, but which ones really are there for you? Which ones are scared,
Mm.
don't want to get involved, are critical, judgmental, or the ones that I think are the worst are the ones that give you unasked for advice. They think they have all the answers.
Mm.
Even my mother, who was my closest friend in the world and who really understood everything, turned to me one afternoon and said, "Jan, you just need to be a stricter parent and Ainsley's behavior will turn around." I mean, it's just not true. And she was horrified as she became more educated at it. But
Right.
those are the things that sting you, and you have to learn to protect yourself. And with friends, some of them will distance themselves. I've had it happen, and it's extremely upsetting. But there's a wonderful silver lining, and that's other parents of neurodivergent kids. You meet them at schools, you meet them at support groups, and support groups to me are so reaffirming to this day. But you form a wonderful community of caring and acceptance and love. And, we even joke about situations that other families wouldn't find funny. Ainsley's rude swearing at teachers that she didn't feel supported her, or Andrew's literal use of language. He had a teacher who said to him one afternoon, "Andrew, that school rule is set in stone." And he looked at her because he's literal, has no abstract thinking capabilities. And he said, "I bet you know, where's the stone?"
He's
So
funny.
you do have to reset those expectations, and you don't have the emotional reserves or the energy to devote to anyone who's not there for you. But there are lots of people out there who will be there for you. So focus on them.
I think that's so important to just, I can almost wrap my mind around it literally, but I also know that in certain situations when I've known the best thing to do is maybe create some boundaries between me and a family member or me and a friend, for self reasons, I struggle to do that because, like, well, it's family, well, it's a friend, right? And so those relationships could be the hardest to maneuver, fluidly. And I like that you take that into account, that if we erase our expectations, that things just might really change. And if we expect, oh, the family's going to be there, but they might not, or the friend's going to be there, they might not, it kind of helps alleviate some of that stress because when it happens, if you have that understanding, or at least you've heard it, it's like, oh, I'm not alone, and this does happen to other people. Um, and so I think I love that as a tip because I think it can go in so many different directions.
Yeah, the isolation can be really scary at times that you as a mother feel or as a parent feel. And again, that's one of the reasons I started advocating. When you're in crisis, it's very difficult. You're just consumed with, as I said, minute by minute. But when the crisis lifts and you do have the time and the energy, I found it so beneficial, not only for society, but personally uplifting to really start helping others. Way back you said, when I started, there wasn't as much information. That's true. I mean, there certainly were videos and books and things that you could read. But Andrew's psychiatrist at our Sick Kids Hospital in downtown Toronto, which is a world-leading hospital, and I co-founded the parent support group on OCD because it just didn't exist in Toronto. And again, it was so reaffirming, as I've said, to find other parents going through the same thing. And that's how I started my advocacy journey.
I'm on the heavier side of, like, that must have been just so difficult